When we get to that part of the hearing, I'll call your name and then unmute you. Remember to state your name for the record. In order to assure that everyone has a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please keep your comments to about 3 minutes or less. I'll let you know when it's been 3 minutes so that you can begin to wrap up, and then the next person can have their turn. Remember, you can also submit your comments in writing, either via email or postal mail. Please let me know in the chat at the bottom of the screen if you have any questions. Please don't use the chat to respond to other people's comments. It's open there to allow participants to communicate with me for process and technical questions. For example, if you change your mind about whether or not you want to testify today. Just as a reminder, this hearing is for the specific proposed rules changes. If you have comments about the 2021 code adoption cycle, but for issues that aren't specific to these proposed code changes, please provide those to the staff separately. As we do with all hearings, the audio will be recorded, and I know that they already started the recording. So I now call, again, welcome. My name's Andrew Klein. Now that we're recording, I'll be the SBCC's designated hearing officer today and will be conducting this hearing. I now call to order the hearing regarding WAC 5150, adoption and amendment of the 2021 International Building Code, and WAC 5154A, adoption and amendment of the 2021 International Fire Code. I would like to advise everyone that this hearing is being recorded and the audio file will become part of the official rulemaking file. For the record, this hearing is being held on February 11th, 2022, beginning at 10 o'clock, well, it's 10:05 a.m. Pacific time via Zoom with teleconference options. The purpose of the hearing is to receive public comment on a revision to WAC 5150, the International Building Code, and WAC 5154, International Fire Code. This hearing is being conducted in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, RCW 4230, and the Administrative Procedures Act, RCW 3405. Legal notice of this hearing was filed with the Washington State Code Revisor on December 30th, 2021. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5150 is WSR 2202040. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5154A is WSR 22-02-041. Notice of this hearing was also posted on the SBCC website. Ray, are you able to post a link to that?
There has been a link posted.
Beautiful, thank you. This hearing is being held to consider testimony on the proposed CR 102. At this time, I will briefly explain the proposed code changes. For the 2021 IBC, the Code Council received 33 proposals. The IBC Technical Advisory Group, also known as a TAG, recommended approval of 28 proposals as submitted or as modified. The council recommended filing the proposed rule to allow input to the public hearing process. For the 2021 IFC, the council received 51 proposals. The IFC Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 50 proposals as submitted or as modified. One proposal was recommended not for approval. 8 proposals were withdrawn by the proponent. The council recommended filing the proposed rule to allow input through the public hearing process. We'll now hear oral testimony regarding the proposed changes. For the record, please identify yourself and whom you represent if you represent an organization. Please speak clearly so that we can get a good recording of your testimony. In order to ensure that everyone has a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please limit your comments to about 3 minutes. So first up, I will call Ken Burlett, who will speak on the International Fire Code. Ken, floor is yours. Ken, you're muted. There you go.
Oh, okay, somebody didn't unmute me. All right, so are you seeing, oh, first you're seeing the table. Okay, well, we'll go backwards. This is a proposal for this table 315761 that's currently a state amendment. We're looking at adding a footnote A. There's some confusion regarding how much fire rated glazing you could have in these opening types. So I'm just trying to put a pointer there to section 716 of the International Building Code. All right, next one, 30819.
Ken, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing a 308.
It was the decorative open flame tables.
My apologies. Can we come back to that one, Ken?
Sure, we can.
Okay, thank you.
And if not, am I allowed to share my screen?
Not during a public hearing.
Okay, it's 405.2. This section was missed by the tag. It references R4 occupancies. It should be struck. Next one. The fire evacuation plans, the current state amendment changes some language in this and does not use the word care recipients. The language highlighted here in yellow is what's proposed to be added in, and why I feel it's necessary because in the section below it, it's also mentioned as care recipients, and therefore we should be using the same language that's in the charging section. Next one. Lockdown plans. This was not adopted in the state. The state did not adopt this section. The city of Seattle is proposing to enact this, and with additional language in the charging section, which states when required by the fire code official, the lockdown plans shall be submitted for review.
Sorry.
To the fire code official, and then they should also include all of those items in there. And then, but the proposal is to put lockdown drills in into the state code, with the fire code official being able to review them when they desire. We're not requiring them. We are just saying that we'd like to review them. Next.
Ken, so you know it's been about 3 minutes. We don't have a lot of people signed up, so I'll give you up to 5. Yeah.
Thank you. Section 918 alerting systems, looking at deleting this entire section, and the reason for it states in the very beginning, an approved alerting system shall be provided in buildings and structures as required in chapter 4. It's not required in chapter 4, and it says and this section, and section 918 does not require an alerting system, so it's very confusing. So we'd like to have that section completely deleted. And then I will orally talk about 308.1.9 decorative open flame tables. It states, since there's not something up in writing for you to see, gas-fired portable or fixed open flame tables and fireplaces. We're looking at striking the and fireplaces because it's not in the title. And then we'd also like to add some language in there that says the protective device shall be not lower than the maximum height of the proposed flame. And then also like to add that gas-fired portable or fixed open flame fire tables shall be used in accordance with their manufacturer's instructions. Where required, the fire code official is authorized to use technical assistance per section 104.8.2 to determine compliance with the section. That is because there are many people that are customizing these fire tables and putting them in locations on roofs, and there are not manufacturer's instructions. So this will allow the fire code official to use the technical assistance section. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. So next up on the list, we have Andrea, but I was thinking we can finish up the International Fire Code, if that's all right with folks. So Shamim, are you prepared to speak now? If not, we can just go in order, but.
Yes, I'm prepared. I signed up for 2 different issues. So is this for the 13R sprinkler systems?
So everyone else is IBC other than you and Steve. So I will let you decide. You can have your 6 minutes total, or you can speak just on the IFC and then we can go into IBC. Do you have a preference?
So I have 3 minutes prepared for IFC and I have 3 minutes prepared for IBC. Is that okay?
Okay, well, yeah, let's do it separately then, since you prepared them separately.
Okay, that sounds
Okay, and then I did have a hand raised. If you've got a question, please type it into the chat and I'll do my best to answer that. So go ahead, Shamim, the floor is yours.
Sure. My name is Shamim Rashid Sumar. I'm a fire protection engineer and a fire safety advocate for NRMCA, the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. I'm providing testimony today regarding fire safety concerns related to the proposed amendments to the International Building Code and the International Fire Code section 903.312 on the topic of NFPA 13R sprinkler systems. So this proposed amendment will roll back previous changes that were made to the IFC and the IBC to limit the use of NFPA 13R sprinkler systems to buildings where the floor level of the highest level is 30 feet or less above the level of the fire department vehicle access. So the intent of these changes really was to address more recent fire history in residential occupancies, particularly podium style developments all over the country. And there have been similar fires here in the state of Washington in multifamily residential structures in Bothell, Linwood, and Olympia. There are some distinct differences in the level of protection provided by NFPA 13 and NFPA 13R sprinkler systems. So NFPA 13 requires sprinkler protection in attics, closets, and bathrooms, whereas NFPA 13R does not. And NFPA 13R also allows for a shorter duration of water supply and allows for a lesser water discharge demand. And these are some of the reasons for our concern for that change to be rolled back. And what I really wanted to do was share an alternate proposal to this code section that was approved as part of the current IBC code development cycle. Am I allowed to share that on screen, Andrew?
Not during the public testimony, no.
Okay. I will submit details on that alternate in writing, but I will describe it here. So during the IBC 2021 code development cycle, there was a change to that previous requirement considered to look at a different approach that's modeled after some of the provisions that are in the attic in NFPA 13R to address attics. As I mentioned, NFPA 13 does not require sprinkler protection in attics. However, in section 903.3.1.2.3 of NFPA 13R, there is a trigger whereby NFPA 13 is required for attics of certain heights. So in the alternate amendment that we are proposing to what is on the table, NFPA 13 systems will still be required where the floor level of the highest story is more than 30 feet above the lowest level of fire department access. However, you would still be able to use a 13R system for group R2 occupancies where the roof assembly is less than 45 feet above the lowest level of fire department access. And the approach
just so you know, time-wise, you've passed the 3 minutes, and I'll give you up to 5 since we don't
I have about 30 seconds more and I'll be finished.
Yep. Perfect. Go ahead.
So this approach of this alternate is to trigger NFPA 13 protection based on the height of the attic. And that's set at a threshold of 45 feet. This would allow a typical 4-story apartment building with 9-foot ceilings and 1-foot floor ceiling assemblies, an additional 5 feet to accommodate the height of a grade level slab that slopes downward. In considering this alternate proposal, the code will still strictly limit the permissible use of NFPA 13R to R2 occupancies that don't exceed 4 stories and which cannot include a combination of tall ceilings and upper level mezzanines. So this proposal has been limited to R2 occupancies, recognizing the different operational, occupant, and architectural attributes of R2 versus R1 occupancies. And we feel this alternate is middle ground between the proposal to roll that limit to 60 feet and what was previously in the code at 30 feet. So we ask for your consideration of this change that will appear in the 2024 International Building Code as an alternate to the amendment that's currently proposed for Washington State. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Steve Scalco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to speak obviously in opposition to this is 13R proposal, opposition to it as it's presently structured. I think what's being proposed far exceeds what's intended to be used for 13R systems. And I point that out for 2 reasons. One, it is of course for a 4-story building, but by allowing it to go to 60 feet, you do start to raise the question that you end up with a building much taller than what the 13R system may have originally been intended, because it really only addresses it as 4-story buildings. What complicates the proposal is the fact that the measurement of 60 feet is going to be taken above the horizontal assembly if it's on a podiums type structure. And I want you to realize what you in essence have is a building, let's say sitting on top of a 1-story parking garage that might be 20 feet high, then you're going to put 4 more stories of that building on top of that. So you could technically have the roof system as high as 80 feet above the ground. When the proposal as the 2121 IBC presently is worded was put in, it was put in especially because of concerns by the fire service when they go to respond to these podium style buildings, having equipment capabilities to reach high up. And of course, the complication is these buildings don't have full sprinkler protection, especially lacking sprinkler protection in the attics and other concealed spaces. And that's why that limit was lowered down from what the previous IBC and of course the Washington State Code would permit. I do think the alternate that Shamim has mentioned is something worth the Building Code Council considering, but right now the proposal as presently written is way far in excess of what I think is prudent or desirable for the safety of people in Group R occupancies. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Just for the record, if you don't mind, please identify yourself and who, if anyone, you represent.
But let me, Andrew, Steve Scalco, I am representing the Northwest Cement Council on this matter.
Thank you. So let's go backwards a little bit. That's everything for the IFC. So thanks everyone for your expertise. We'll go to the IBC now. Andrea, are you ready to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Awesome. So this is Andrea Smith with the Building Industry Association of Washington. We are a trade association that represents 8,000 members that build the places that we call home. So I'm speaking today in reference to the IBC, specifically section 429, which is the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So within the TAG process, the TAG members removed an exception that allowed for an exemption of EV charging infrastructure installation if a utility infrastructure design was required to meet the increased load. And so by doing so, it would increase utility side design by a cost factor of $1,000 or more per dwelling unit. BIW would like to see that exception added back in before official adoption by the State Building Code Council. Our state is in not just a housing affordability and homelessness crisis. We are also in a rental crisis where we need at least 157,000 more rental units to come available for extremely low income renters. And according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, 68% of those low income households are severely cost burdened by housing costs, which includes monthly utility payments. While it is important to meet statutory mandates and prepare the state for an electric vehicle movement, we need to balance this with the unforeseen added cost to renters. BIW members that develop multifamily apartments have stated that utility upgrades can cost upwards of $20,000. And if paid for by the developer, this cost is passed on in the form of larger rent premiums. While if it's paid by the utility company, it's passed on in the form of higher monthly utility bills. So any amount of relief that can be done by the State Building Code Council for this, for renters and developers in the state would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Tom.
There we go. Morning, everyone. Thank you, Andrew.
Morning. Yep.
I'm Tom Young with the Northwest Concrete Masonry Association, based here in Seattle area. Our group has actively participated in the various code tags and committees during this code cycle, as we have over many years, and appreciate the opportunity to comment today at the hearing. Our membership is opposed to proposal GP 180 is what we're talking about today, which would allow, if approved, firewalls to be built with combustible materials for type 3 and 4 buildings. The proponent's primary reason for this was potential differential movement between dissimilar building materials. And we believe this is something that can be addressed through proper design and detailing. It has been done for years and can be done. It's a challenge, but the detailing can take care of that issue. And it's not a good reason, in our opinion, to reduce the fire resistance or performance of building firewalls. As most of you know, firewalls are a major component of fire-safe building design. A similar proposal to this one was addressed at ICC, and the group there voted to disapprove a similar proposal to this one, with the committee stating, quote, "There seems to be a lot of performance uncertainty, preferring to be careful with allowances for type 3 and 4 construction." So I think we need to keep in mind that performance uncertainty that they were talking about was related to fire performance, as it should, not concerns with potential shrinkage between dissimilar materials, which again is the basis for the proposal in front of us. And additionally, the rationale for the acceptance of this mentions the city of Seattle and the fact that the city has allowed combustible materials in firewalls for these construction types. However, I think it's not relevant in terms of a statewide amendment, given that most cities in Washington state neither have the firefighting resources nor the rapid response time that Seattle is fortunate enough to have. So we would ask that the council disapprove proposal GP 1-80, and that would take us back to the provisions that are currently in the IBC and would be consistent with the recent ICC action. So we thank you again for the time to comment.
Thank you very much, Tom. Shamim, back to you. Steve's got a question. Are you able to?
I've put something in the chat box, but I've not received responses, so I'm not clear.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't have I've only got the option to chat with specific staff members, but go ahead, Steve, since you're unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me mention the other reason I asked to speak or try to speak here is because I wanted to follow up with Tom Young's comments, because firewalls is the other item I had an interest in speaking on.
Yep, and you're next, so you're on the agenda here to speak on the IBC.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Steve Scalco, representing North.
Steve, let me. Okay, go ahead. I mean, you'll be next.
Tell me what you need.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay.
You got 3 minutes.
Don't mean to cause confusion. Steve Scalco speaking
No
from
worries.
the Northwest Cement council. Also speaking in opposition to the firewall change. There were multiple changes in this last cycle from the 21 IBC to the 24 IBC, trying to introduce combustible firewalls into the code as is intended by this proposal, and all of them were defeated. Much of the reasons are that when you realize the importance of firewalls, they are a distinct and one of the most distinct requirements in the building code in order to create separate buildings. They've always been non-combustible. And many of the model codes for years, when the IBC was developed, it did recognize the IBC, not the IBC, UBC, Uniform Building Code, did allow combustible firewalls for type 5 construction, which is typical wood frame construction, but it always kept it non-combustible for the other types of buildings. What's important to realize is that when you go to these type 3 and type 4 buildings, they have extremely large areas. And yet the interior of the buildings is combustible material. So you got to think about it as if, as my building gets bigger, my fire load goes up. Some of these buildings can be just as large as a non-combustible building, a type 2 building, or close to it. So I want you to realize that's the reason there's always been this limitation on the firewalls. In the proponent's reasoning statement, they use the logic about the fact that a type 5 building can have a combustible firewall, and yet the allowable area of it is about half of a type 3 building. To me, that's exactly the reason why this ought to be disapproved, because now you're saying a type 3 is really twice as large a fire load. Well, if you're increasing the fire load, why would you want to reduce the fire safety of your firewalls? Historically, they've been non-combustible because they're important nature to provide a line of demarcation for a fire to spread from one building to the next, not only to minimize property damage, but also to assist the fire service in their fire attacks. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yep, you're very welcome. Thank you, Steve. Okay, Shamim, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Shamim Rashid Sumar, Fire Protection Engineer and Fire Safety Advocate with the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. I'm also providing testimony today regarding the fire safety concerns we have to this proposed amendment on combustible materials in firewalls, IBC section 706.3. And I'm going to continue on some of the arguments that Steve made. This proposed amendment was based partly on the argument that type 3 and type 4 construction provide just as much fire resistance as non-combustible construction. But I wanted to stress the point that a firewall is not the same as a fire resistance rated wall. So firewalls have to be designed and constructed in accordance with the code to allow collapse of a structure on either side without collapse of the wall under fire conditions. And that's why a firewall can function to separate a structure into two separate buildings. So while fire resistance rated walls carry an hourly rating, they are not designed to withstand collapse in the same manner that's required for firewalls. And the testing that is referenced in the rationale of the proposed amendment, that testing was not for firewall performance. It was looking just at fire resistance. None of the fire testing that's been done for type 4 construction conducted to date that I'm aware of has looked at walls functioning as firewalls. It's only looked at testing for fire resistance rating. And Steve mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it again. There were similar code change proposals that were considered as part of the most recent 2021 code development cycle in the ICC, 4 to be exact, with a similar intent to allow combustible materials and firewalls. None of those proposals were approved at any stage in the process. They were also voted for disapproval and the online governmental consensus vote, and they will not be included as an amendment to the 2024 IBC. So it's for these reasons, respectfully, that we ask for your consideration to disprove this proposed amendment in the Washington State Building Code. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you for testifying. We've just got 2 testifiers left, Beth and Kathleen. So Beth, you're up.
Thank you. I'm Beth Jarrett, Resilient and Green Building Specialist with the City of Tacoma. The City of Tacoma's Office of Environmental Policy and Sustainability supports the adoption of Appendix P100 as part of the 2021 Building Code Amendment process to increase the reuse and recycling of construction and demolition materials. Future adoption of this appendix by our city will support a variety of city goals related to waste management, housing, climate, and economic development, provide code consistency for the Washington building community, and serve as a catalyst for positive market transformation. Sustainable materials management. Construction and demolition debris make up nearly 12% of the city's waste stream at our transfer station. Requiring two-bin collection on job sites and salvage, reuse, and recycling of construction and demolition materials are included as action items in our materials management plan to help the city meet its 70% diversion goal by 2028. Housing. Multifamily development continues to grow in Tacoma, including major investments in new construction and major renovation of existing property. As part of the city's affordable housing action strategy, Home in Tacoma Phase 2 includes actions to create green, sustainable, and climate resilient housing. Salvage and adaptive reuse are already part of that discussion. Historic preservation. Tacoma is a city rich with culture, history, archaeological resources, and historic architecture. Our historic preservation program encourages the rehabilitation, preservation, and adaptive reuse of commercial and retail buildings. Climate action. The salvage and reuse of building materials contributes to reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from landfill diversion. It also contributes to reduction in embodied carbon when salvage materials are used in new construction and renovation. Economic development. Recently, supply chain issues and unstable lumber markets have negatively impacted the construction industry. This is an opportunity to support and expand our local economy. Existing building material reuse companies have the capacity to grow, and there's also an opportunity for new companies to be established. Thank you.
Thank you. And last up, Kathleen.
Hey, thank you so much, Andrew, and everybody here. Appreciate your time. And just, I do have a question before beginning, Andrew, if that's all right. I did submit another request to testify on Appendix P and was curious if that, I got a confirmation, but I was just curious if that was added to the list.
So yeah, I've got you on the subject for EV charging as well as Appendix P. So you've got 3 minutes for per code. So you still have the 3 minutes, but you know, you're last up and I'll let you go up to 5, but.
Do my monologue. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank you again. My name is Kathleen Petrie and I represent King County. And speaking on behalf of the EV infrastructure proposal, and the stance that I'm going to take in that is in support of an increase in EV infrastructure. So we've got Washington as a zero emission vehicle state, which will require that 8% of new vehicle sales to be zero emission vehicles by 2025. Washington State Department of Commerce is following in the steps of California Air Resource Board, which is developing regulations to mandate that 100% of sales of new passenger cars and trucks to be zero emission by 2035. The majority of charging is happening at home. Those who own homes have the advantage of making a decision to purchase electric vehicles and install a home charging station. Those who rent, in particular those who reside in affordable rental housing, are at the mercy of the building developer who may not want to add this amenity due to cost or otherwise, and therefore do not have the option to purchase a non-emission vehicle. This is an equity issue. US data currently shows that 1 in 10 electric vehicles are being charged at a location where people work or where they're doing business. So those are all just some background facts, so to speak. And all this being said, we need to build some infrastructure in this code cycle at a minimum to be prepared for the 8% of vehicles by 2025. To wait until the 2024 code cycle, it will be too late. The TEG discussions on Section 429 EV charging were primarily spent deciphering the intent of House Bill 1287. The content of Proposal 196 went beyond the state's amendments EV capable, with requirements for installed EV chargers and EV-ready parking spaces. But we just didn't have time to have much discussion. And we do need more than EV-capable space requirements in the 2021 code. Because of the real cost and equity impacts Andrea mentioned this before, these, more voices need to be at the table. Requirements for EV should be more inclusively developed, more stakeholder voices. At one point, it was suggested in one of the meetings to create an EV charging tag. Per House Bill 1287, EV charging infrastructure rules shall be implemented by July 1st, 2024. So I would like to ask the council to please consider the formation of an EV charging tag that can address a clarified House Bill directive, build accommodation for both battery and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and develop proper regulation that builds equitable and appropriate EV infrastructure, not lagging, but keeping in line with the vehicle stock on the roads. So thank you very much to testify on that.
Thank you. And then Appendix P, did you?
Yeah, Appendix P.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Kathleen Petrie and I represent King County. Speaking in support of proposed Appendix P. The intent of this proposal is to reduce the amount of construction and demolition waste that goes to landfills and shifts focus awareness towards recycling and, more importantly, salvage. This awareness is made through the two submittal documents. Prior to beginning a project, a salvage assessment allows the owner to thoughtfully identify possible materials, systems, and appliances that might be salvageable from building as it is dismantled. Salvage elements can be reused on site, other projects, or sold to retailers for resale. Keeping materials in use longer has environmental benefits such as carbon sequestration, reduced carbon emissions from material not needing to be processed. At project completion, the waste diversion report is submitted. If the jurisdiction has material diversion targets, the form helps the jurisdiction track percentages of what is being diverted and helps to identify what markets or processing facility types need to be increased. I would like to emphasize that this is proposed as an optional appendix, meaning it is not required to adopt, but is approved by the State Building Code Council to adopt locally if a jurisdiction wishes to do so. It is appropriate as an optional appendix because not all communities in Washington State have commercial salvage retail businesses or reasonable access to recycling processing facilities. But if a jurisdiction wishes to prioritize material management and reductions in carbon emissions, then this appendix will provide the language and forms without having to spend valuable staff time developing that. So thank you again for the opportunity to present.
Thank you. So that brings us up to the end of folks who've signed up. Again, you can submit written testimony through the link that's been put in the chat for you, and you can also get that from the State Building Code Council's website. So this hearing has been held to consider testimony on the proposals for WAC 5150, the International Building Code, and WAC 5154A, the International Fire Code. All testimony presented at this hearing, along with all written comments received today, will be part of the official hearing record for this proposal. A final decision on adopting this rule will be made on April 22nd, 2022. On behalf of the SBCC, thank you all for participating in this hearing. This hearing stands adjourned at 10:41 a.m. Pacific time.
Andrew, this is Ray. May I make one announcement real quick?
Yep.
I just wanted to make an announcement to the public that if anything that they heard today or if they missed our sign up date, we will be having another public hearing regarding these codes on March 11th. So you can submit written testimony or sign up to testify during the March 11th hearing as well if you missed today.
All right. Thank you, Ray. So the hearing stands adjourned, I guess, officially at 10:42 a.m. Pacific time. So again, thank you.